Hello, my beautiful friends. Welcome to True Crime Wine Wednesday. If you're new here, hi, hello, welcome. I'm Sherilyn, and I am so glad you found me. If you're not new here, welcome back. Thank you for joining me every single upload, usually on Wednesdays. We're getting better. I love and I appreciate you so much. We're still working on the background. Added my true crime over on this side, and then I have the fab wine, but right now I don't like the look of the wall on this side, so I'm getting some more wallpaper to put there, so more pictures to make it look like wallpaper. Anyway, it's a work in progress, but we're making do with what we've got in between all of the behind the scenes stuff. I'm still here. We're gonna get right into it today. Before we do, I have a quick message for you. I want to give a huge thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. I worked with Skillshare in the past and I was so excited to partner up with them again, get another course under my belt. I ended up choosing the Ultimate Self-Care Playbook, Discover and Nurture Your Centered Self with Jonathan Van Ness. And this was the perfect course for me to start back up with. There were a few that were calling out to me, but I'm so happy that I started with this one because the whole process is just to take time to do self-care, and that doesn't always mean turning things off. For me, I like to be busy. So sometimes I think that self-care is also working because I'm like, okay, well, I have free time. I'm just going to keep working. And it's okay to love your job. But at the same time, it's been also so nice to just carve out some time to learn something new, develop new habits. The whole process was a blast. Jonathan is obviously hilarious and so easy to watch. But he took this concept of making time for self-care into this whole different life that I had never considered before. Even just starting the course, you make this day planner. And it wasn't like, okay, just go and pick a day planner and use it and this is your tool. The requirement was to actually put effort into it and make the whole process this adventure. Put your love and affection into it, all of this energy to get it all jazzified. It makes you want to use it more. He also says that if you make it more personal and you have maybe even photos on there or scrap clippings that will remind you of a goal, you're more likely to use it every single day and be proud of it. Then within it, if you are writing out these goals and now you're constantly looking at them, the chances of you attaining them are so much higher, which in itself is self-care and discovery. I honestly can't say enough about this course, right from the craft time, setting your goals. We also took some time for a little yoga moment, released some limiting beliefs. He had amazing ideas of ways to implement and develop your new routine into your everyday life moving forward. He also didn't leave out a spa time moment, which was very nice. The whole thing was just so encouraging and fun. Truthfully, it took a lot of components for success and happiness that you might learn from other courses, but it wrapped it up into this fun little exciting motivational ball of love. It was so great that Big Guy would walk by sometimes and listen to it, and each time he'd linger a little bit longer. It made him so intrigued that now we're going out and doing the whole process for him, which is so cool and important because now he gets to set out his goals, his intentions, which are obviously different than mine. And it just makes us stronger individuals, stronger couple, stronger parents, all of the things. I honestly can say that this is something I will continue to do and encourage my loved ones to do every single year when I need to get a new planner. If you want to check out a course also, Skillshare is offering the first 1,000 people who click on my link in the description one free month of Skillshare. Once again, the first 1,000 people to click that link will get a free month of Skillshare. And you'll find that right in my description below. Thank you so much, Skillshare. I can't wait to share with you all what I learned next. All right, and today's riddle is, I never was, am always to be. No one ever saw me, nor ever will. And yet, I am the confidence of all. What am I? I know you guys are going to get it like right quick, I think. Did I? Of course not. So today's case is based on this book that I read called Death of an Actress by Anthony Brown. I read it while I was camping and I was so into it. I loved the presentation. He really makes you feel like you're a juror on this old case. And I think we all kind of tend to take the perspective of what would we do if we were in this situation or if we were hearing it. And so, I want to take on that perspective here with the video as well. I love to hear from you. You all know this. So pop in the comments and let me know, what you would have done. Okay, let's get started. We are taking it back to 1947. 21-year-old actress Gay Gibson is aboard the Union Castle liner named Durban Liner, and she's in cabin 126. or she was supposed to be. On the early hours of October 18th, she disappeared from her cabin. She was on this voyage alone. She was heading back from Johannesburg to England because she was just in a stage show. She was the only single first-class female passenger. And hours before, she had gone to a dance with some other first-class passengers. In the morning when the stewardess came to give her her morning orange juice, her cabin was empty. The captain turned the ship around. There was no trace of her. Yet when they docked, a very popular first-class steward named James Camb became the prime suspect in her disappearance. What happened in cabin 126? Eileen Gay Gibson was born to Joseph and Eileen, who was known as Daisy, on June 13th, 1926. The family was living in India when Eileen was born because her father was there for work, but about 5 months into her birth, they moved to their home in England. From childhood, Eileen wanted to be an actress. She wasn't described as a scholar type. Sports and arts were more her jam. So by the time that she was 15, she was really focusing on that. She was quite mature for her age. She looked a lot older than she was, so she used that to her advantage to get the ball rolling. When she was 15 years old, she was involved in this Prisoners of War's fundraisers, and she was known as the Gay Young Thing. And so that was how her nickname Gay became to be. It just stuck. She loved it, and that's what she went by. I think those that were close to her still called her Eileen, but that was her star name, Gay Gibson. It works. In 1946, when she was 20 years old, she joined Stars in Battle Dress, which was a entertainment group for the troops. It sounds really cool. She got to travel a lot. She went to Germany, India, Persia, all while being able to do what she loved, which was entertain. While on tour, I guess she had, I'll call it a quirky reputation. She was a little high-strung, quite emotional, people said. And she also attached herself, quite strongly to people. I guess there was one soldier in particular, his name was Pierre, and she was very taken with him and wanted to remember him and the moments they had together. So she had burnt a cigarette, hole in her hand to have the scar to remember him by. I'm not judging. I have also done questionable things to remember people in my life and highly regretted as I was doing it. If you've seen the tattoo tour video, you know what I'm talking about. About a year into her gig, she made it back to her homeland in South Africa. There, she was starring in a play called Golden Boy. The play ended on her 21st birthday, and her co-star said that she was really excited to start this next chapter in her life. It sounds like she was going through a really hard time. During production, she had some health struggles. A few times her co-stars had seen her have convulsions. She had fainting spells, but she didn't want to go and see a doctor. They got the impression that she was just looking forward to kind of leaving Johannesburg and moving on to England. They said that they were aware of her being in at least 2 affairs with married gentlemen, and one of them allegedly had impregnated her. And this is the guy who had allegedly bought her this ticket back to England from Johannesburg, and it's assumed that he did this because he didn't want his wife to find out about the baby. But those who knew her were under the impression that she was very much still into him. I think her impression of her leaving was that he was just kind of going to take this time to sort things out. It was a 2-week trip back to England, so there was a lot of time for him to sort things out. She was looking forward to talking to him when she arrived home and see what their next steps were. So she boards the Durban Castle, and pretty quickly she catches the eye, and vice versa, of first-class steward James Camb. James Camb was born December 16th, 1916 in Waterfoot, which is a small mill town in southeast Lancashire. I'm sure it sounds so much more beautiful with an English accent. It's probably like Lancashire. Okay, just stop, Sherilyn, stop. He was born to his father, Bob, and his mother, Lily. By the way that you spell Lily is Llie, and I think that's so cute. Tragically, when James was only a couple months old, his mom passed unexpectedly, and he was raised by his father and aunt. Growing up, he was a really well-liked kid. He had a natural charisma to him. In school, he got good grades, had a lot of friends, but he was known for being a little bit of a troublemaker. Class clown, if you would, even though he had good grades. I don't think all of the teachers were super stoked to have him in his class because he would disrupt the other children. He came from a really long line of factory workers, and I think it was just expected that in his life he would also go down that path. And his first job was at a slipper factory, but something in James always wanted something more for himself. He ended up joining the Navy Reserve and married a woman named Margaret. They had a daughter named Evelyn a year after marrying. Since he was working a lot at sea and it would take a lot of his time away from his home life, after they started a family, he quit his job and took one closer to home, working at the Singer sewing factory. This only lasted about 5 months because he was very quickly reminded, oh yeah, factory life, not for me. So he got hired with Union Castle and landed a job on Durban Castle. Originally, he was hired as an assistant cook, but he was quickly promoted to first class steward based on how charismatic he was with the passengers, and he got along really well with crew as well. He was known as being somewhat of a Casanova, had a bit of a reputation for being a little bit too friendly with female passengers despite being married himself. I don't know if it was part of his thing. He made very good money, especially in tips from first class passengers, so maybe he just showed extra attention to do that. And he was quite generous with his money. I guess he spoiled his daughter and his wife a lot back home. Maybe it's to ease his conscience of all the funny business aboard. So it's obvious that when Gay boarded the Durban Castle, she was a standout. She's described by so many as having this flawless, almost milky, like white, powdery skin and this silky dark hair and these like doll eyes that just bring you in. Pretty much, she attracted a lot of attention, especially James. And James attracted her attention too because they were seen talking, flirting quite a bit on this trip. On this trip particular, the ship was also only 1/3 full, so it left a lot of time for them to get to know each other. They built a pretty fast friendship. He also insinuated that, there was probably more to the friendship and what they were using all that free time for. I guess there were even some crew members that were getting a little bit frustrated because he wasn't assigned to her cabin and to take care of her, but she would request him. And I don't think that meant just to flirt. They got to know each other very fast. She shared with him that she had been involved with a married man and that she still had very strong feelings for him, and also shared that she thought that she was pregnant. There was no confirmation yet, but she was late and pretty sure that she was with child. Now, Gay's last letter home was written on October 13th. She didn't mention anything about the baby. She just pretty much talked about how empty the ship was, and the only thing that she was really looking forward to was that there were a few dances coming up that she was going to attend. On October 17th, she did attend one of these dances. After the dance, she socialized with some of her other first-class passengers that she had become close with. At one point, she said that she wanted to have a late-night swim because it was really, really hot. Everybody on the ship said that it was hard to just get a break and try to cool down. Apparently, she did go down to her cabin, looked for her swim soap, but she couldn't find it, so she just went back up and took a walk on the promenade to try to cool down. She saw James around 11 p.m. and ordered a rum from him, and she just wanted it pre-made and set aside. I think the bar closed around midnight or maybe even around 11 when she saw him. But she wanted to save it for around like 1 a.m. so she could have it right before she went to bed. And he hooked her up by just putting it to the side before everything got cleaned up. Apparently, he suggested, maybe they have a little nightcap together. And she said, if you wish. So at 12:45, she and her other passenger friends went to each of their cabins for the night. She didn't end up staying in hers long. It was really, really muggy in there. So she went and had a cigarette, had her glass of rum, and just watched the stars for a while. She was seen by several members of the deck crew doing this. At this time, she was alone. And that was the last that they saw of Gay. The next morning, the stewardess arrived at Gay's cabin at around 7:30, which was her normal routine. She came to deliver her morning orange juice. Usually after she had her juice, she took a bath around 8 a.m. And then from there, she went on and had breakfast. This morning, though, she knocks on her door a few times and there's no answer. She tries the door and it pops open. She sees that Gay's not in bed, but she assumed that maybe she was having a little bit of morning sickness because, like I said, James had told people in whispering of the crew that there was a possibility that she was pregnant. So she just wanted to leave the orange juice for her on her nightstand and then come back and check on her in a little bit. She leaves the juice, goes about her regular routine, and around 20 minutes later, she comes back to Gay's cabin and she sees that she's still not returned because the orange juice is sitting there untouched. She immediately feels like something's wrong, so she goes to the captain, and the captain gets on the speaker and he says, if anybody has seen Gay, please let myself or a crew member know immediately. He also turned the boat around thinking the worst and wanting to go and look for her in the water. So as word's spreading and people are trying to figure out what the heck happened, it comes out that around 3 a.m., bells had rung from Gay's cabin for the night steward or stewardess, whoever was on that evening. So the night steward gets this alarm, heads to her room, knocks on the door. There's no answer. He tries the door and it's unlocked. So he opens a little bit, and as he's opening, he sees this male figure. It's the back of the person, so he can't see their face, and they've got their undershirt on and their pants, and they're quickly moving forward to close the door, saying everything's okay. He shut the door, and even though he didn't see the person's face, instantly he knew James is up to his usual way. Just the mannerisms, the tone of the voice, the hair, everything. He worked alongside him a lot. He felt like this, without a shadow of the doubt, was James in there. So they bring this to the captain, and the captain questions James, but he denies that it's him. He said that he had no late night interactions with her. The last he had seen her was around 12:45 when he was heading to his room, and he didn't leave there until his morning shift was to start at 5:45 a.m. The captain says, okay, very well. Well, we're just going to have you checked out by the doctor, examine, make sure everything looks okay, and go from there. By this point, it's almost noon, and the captain made the hard decision to turn the boat around and just go back on the scheduled path. He figured if Gay was in the water, the chances of recovering her were very small. He did radio some other ships that were on that course just to have them look out for her, but never ended up hearing anything back. Now, before James's exam, he wrote a formal statement to the captain, so he had something in writing giving him a timeline. And this was a little bit different. Now he was saying that he did see Gay and that he was on the promenade deck. He was there having a smoke, and this was around 2 a.m., which, isn't a half an hour discrepancy. He's buying a little bit more time, which is suspicious. And then also adding to the suspicion is when he had his exam, he needed to be photographed without his shirt on, and there were several areas of his body that had pretty noticeable scratches. There were some on the back of his neck, on his left shoulder, on his right wrist, and on his right shoulder. The scratches to his left wrist and shoulder appeared older, and he told the doctor that he did them himself. Like I said, it was really hot and muggy, and he was just feeling, when it's really hot and you're just like sticky and you're itchy. Plus he's wearing these steward uniforms, which don't help the situation. So he said he's just constantly itching himself, and he scratches himself. So the doctor's like, oh, okay, if it happened yesterday or last night, these ones are old. Maybe that's true. But the one on his wrist and on the back of his neck, they seemed a lot fresher, and they were hard to explain. There was a substantial amount of them. There were about 9 lines on his neck, but they weren't thick enough to be, human nails, if that makes sense. They were very fine, almost like cat scratches. He's trying to say it's just, again, from him scratching, especially because the collar of his uniform always irritates that area. But when Gay's hairbrush was collected for evidence, they see that the bristles on it are very thin and sharp. So the question was, okay, well, did he come into her room uninvited and she reached for some form of weapon to defend herself, and that's where scratches came from? Speculation was pretty much left at that. It took 7 days to arrive at their dock. They arrived on October 24th, and when they did, police were waiting to question James officially. During his questioning, he admits to knowing Gay. He just tries to make it seem like I had attended to her a few times, but that was it. But when police spoke to other members of the crew, they said no, there was definitely some form of relationship there. Not, saying that they were an item or anything, but there was a connection. There was definitely at the very least a friendship. He's giving them the latest version that he had given the captain, that he was out for a smoke at 2 a.m., went back to his cabin, didn't come out till 5:45. But the police are really pushing, okay, you've got this night watchman who is insistent that it's you. He knows you very well. We have told him how serious it would be for him to falsely accuse you. He is willing to bet his entire life that it was you in this cabin. And James just consistently is keeping up with his story, saying no. But after a while of going back and forth, he finally says, okay, I was in there. He says he wasn't in there when those alarm bells rang, though. He said that he went down with her around 11 p.m. when she went to go and look for her bathing suit, and she couldn't find it, and she had ordered this rum. I mean, interrogation 101. And the detectives were like, okay, well, the story's changing. We are definitely getting somewhere. So they keep up the pressure, but they go from the angle of, you're the only person who can tell us what happened that night and where she is. Finally, he broke down and said it was him when the other steward opened the door, but that he didn't kill Gay. He said that night around 1 a.m., he did go down to her cabin to have this rum with her. He said at that time when he went to her room, she wasn't there. So he just went up on the deck, had a smoke, walked around, tried to cool down. And then around 2 a.m., he went back to check on her again to see if she was there now before he went to bed himself. This time he said she was there. They had a brief conversation, and then with her consent, he got into her bed. He said they started getting busy, and while they were, she started convulsing. She also started foaming at the corners of her mouth, he said, and then she just stopped breathing. James said he tried to find a heartbeat. He couldn't. So he started CPR and he tried to resuscitate her for over 20 minutes, but just couldn't bring her back. While he's trying to figure out his next move, this was around the time that the night watchman had gotten this alarm. He says he has no idea how it rang out because Gay was already gone and he surely wasn't gonna ring it to bring attention. But once he came, he started panicking. Initially, he just wanted to leave the room and act like, something happened and the morning stewardess would find her and everything would go from there. But now with this witness of seeing somebody in the room with her, he freaked out. And then he started going through a bunch of scenarios. He considered telling the captain, but then worried about his job security and his wife back home finding out. So he made the decision to take her body and push it through the porthole that was in her room into the ocean. He said the reason for this was that in the morning, hopefully, it would be assumed that she got up and something happened to her and that she had just maybe fallen overboard, and he would have pushed enough distance away from her for any speculation. After his statement, he ended up thanking the detectives for pushing it out of him because it really lifted the weight from carrying this guilt. And then he asks for their discretion to just not share any of this information with his wife. They did release him and allowed him to go back home, and I think he obviously suspected that the whole ordeal was behind him, but 2 days later, he was charged with her murder. On March 18th, 1948, the trial started, and it was a whole production. People were waiting in line for hours to get a seat. In the courtroom, they even had recreated her cabin with her bed, the door, the bells, the porthole. Fun fact, it was recreated by Harlan and Wolff, and I have woken up in their building, walked their shipyard where the Titanic was built when I stayed at the Titanic Hotel in Belfast. And if you have never done it, oh my gosh, do it. Anyways, during the trial, prosecutors felt like there was no health catastrophe that happened. They believed he outright murdered her, that he forced his way into her cabin. When she rejected his advances, he assaulted her and strangled her. Although they didn't have evidence in terms of a body, they did have those photographs of him with scratches. And they also had a small amount of blood on her sheets, as well as quite a large urine stain, which they felt like her body had done when she was being strangled. At the trial, her mom came to be a witness, and she denied any health concerns of her daughter. She says she was in perfect health. The only thing that she recently had was chronic ear infections that she had been seen at a hospital for. She also was aware of the burn on her hand, but said that was from an iron and not for any attention from another guy or for like a memory of some gentleman. And when it came to Gay's private life, her mom strongly denied that she was promiscuous. She also didn't believe that she was pregnant at the time of her death either. Her belief was that her daughter was returning back to England not because some man had sent her away because he didn't want his wife to find out about an affair, but because she had always wanted to go back to England. And she said he bought her this ticket because he saw something in her that was star quality, and it was almost like an investment that he was going to send her back. She was going to do her thing and become this star, and he was, the one who helped fund those dreams for happening. Which, I mean, may be true, but there also is the other side that maybe Gay just didn't want to divulge this type of information to her mother. Several of Gay's friends did say that they were aware of her health conditions. They had even seen them for themselves. There was more than one that said they saw Gay faint in front of them and also turn blue and foam at the side of her mouth before, which is exactly what James described as happening, and he wouldn't have known that information from them prior to this trial. James also took the stand at his trial, and his story was the same that he had given the detectives. He admitted to throwing her body away to try and not be associated with her disappearance in any ways, but then said in hindsight he wished that he wouldn't have done that because her body would have become evidence and it would have been examined by a coroner and could have possibly proved that she died because of health complications and not because of him. There were also neighbors in the suite beside hers that provided statements that they never heard a struggle. There was never screams or arguing coming from Gay's cabin that night. They did say they did hear some movement, but nothing that was alarming. So after a 4-day trial and only 45 minutes of deliberation, the jury came back with a verdict of guilty and James was sentenced to death. However, during this time, there was discussion of a no hanging bill that was going around in Parliament. So he ended up actually avoiding capital punishment. And after only 11 years in jail, he was released. And I don't know what I would have done. I don't know how I would have voted as a juror. Like, how would you have voted? I do believe that they did have a connection, a friendship. His crewmates knew prior to her death that she was possibly pregnant. James was the one who shared that information from him, and he would have only been able to get it from her. He also didn't know that she had any health conditions, but when he's describing what happened in her cabin, that was also something her castmates, director in some of her plays had seen for themselves. Again, like, he wouldn't have had any knowledge of this. If there was a medical expert that was called, they may have suggested that she had heart disease. Her symptoms of doing things like turning blue fits with the heart not being able to pump fast enough. And fainting is also a common symptom of that. That being said, though, there were also 3 prior female passengers on other ships that came forward that said James made unwanted advances towards them. One passenger said she woke up to him just crouched down beside her. She said when she opened her eyes, he was holding her shoulder down, and then he draped his body over her, started kissing her when she didn't want to. She told him, "My aunt is in the next room." Apparently this worked for a minute, and then he decided, okay, I'm just going to take my chances. And then she had to knock on the door to make noise, and this made him get up and get off of her. She didn't end up reporting anything because she was too embarrassed. To this day, this is a common reaction that we see of victims of sexual assault. That, or they feel like somehow they were responsible for what happens, but just breaks my heart. The other report was very similar. It was a young girl who was traveling with her parents, and she wakes up again to him just standing in her room. He sits on the side of her bed, and she just turns her back to him. She said he kissed her back a couple times and then just sat on the corner of her bed for about 20 minutes until he just randomly got up and left. She also felt really embarrassed and confused as to what the hell had happened, and she didn't want him to think that she was scared of him or that he was able to get any sort of reaction out of her, so she also didn't want to say anything. The third story was allegedly the first woman who was attacked by him. He met up with a young woman that he was friendly with, brought them these 2 drinks to have in the equipment room. She said everything was, kind of going okay and just very friendly. And then he locked the door and she became very uncomfortable. She said out of nowhere, he just started strangling her. And then just as quickly as he started, he stopped and then told her she could leave. Before she left, he asked her to keep it quiet and apologize because he didn't know what came over her. This poor thing, though, she was left with these bloodshot eyes for the next few days because of what he did, but she made up some excuse for it because she was too embarrassed to talk about it. So like I said, only after serving 11 years, he was released from Wakefield Prison in September 1959, and he went on to marry a waitress. He adopted her daughter. He seemed to be making a new life for himself, but then in 1971, he was arrested after breaking into a hotel room where 3 11-year-old girls were staying and making similar advances. So he was arrested again, then released in 1978, and then a year later after he was released, he died of natural causes. So it makes you think. I don't believe he was a murderer, but I definitely believe he was a creep. He was a predator. He needed to not be around girls, women, anybody. I believe that there was a chance that he went in Gay's room uninvited, or maybe even invited, and that while he was making unwelcomed advances because he assumed, that just Gay was okay with it, she was so distraught that it could have triggered a seizure. That could have been what caused her death, or that could have led to maybe heart failure if she was already having heart issues. So he essentially would have been the cause, but I don't think that it was premeditated. I think we can all agree that he surely didn't do anything to help his case and prove that he was in these mutual interactions with these women, especially when he gets released and then just goes and breaks into a room of 3 young girls. And I want to know how he even got a job in hospitality after his reputation and charges. How surprised are we that in the 40s, 50s, predators were getting released after a fraction of their sentence? And then reoffending. Like the pattern, it's like we should not be where we are today. You know how worked up about this stuff I get, you guys. I'm roasting in the blazer now. Okay, that's it for me today. I'd love to hear your theories. Be the juror on the case. Let me know what your thoughts are. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It means the world to me. I love and I appreciate you so much. Like, how are we almost at 200,000 subscribers? Like, didn't we just get to 100,000, you guys? Like, I freaking love and appreciate you. I'm sending you big screen squeezes right now. All right, the answer to the riddle. Quick reminder. I never was. Am always to be. No one ever saw me, nor ever will. And yet I am the confidence of all. What am I? And the answer is tomorrow or the future. How inspiring, right? Okay, I'll see you in the next video. I will miss you terribly. Until then, make sure to love each other, love yourself, and I will see you soon. Bye.